hosting. Welcome, welcome. Progress.
Recording in progress. Just already. Ready?
I just feel
Yeah.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm happy to introduce Tom Regan again. This is the sixth presentation, and today he will be discussing Lead, Then and Now, an expanded tour. Welcome, Tom.
Yes, indeed. Good afternoon again. On August 8th of last year, we started this presentation series, and it was on the Gold Server Encyclopedia with an introduction, and I read my chapter in Price of Gold. That's right, the Price of Gold book. And that was the introduction. In September, we did underground, surface, and a virtual tour of the 4850 level. In October, we did economic impact and science. November, we did underground cleanup closure. And in December, we did mine rescue and emergency response. We took a month off in January so Diane and I could go to Florida to visit our oldest daughter and her husband and family. And today we're going to be doing a Homestake Lead, Then and Now, an extended tour. And you can see in the, maybe you can't see, I think we have the wrong beginning here. There we go. This is the first slide. So this presentation has 356 slides in it. If I spent about 15 seconds on each slide, we'd be here till after dinner tonight. So obviously we're not going to go through all of this. We're going to touch base on part one, which is the original tour that Homestake Sanford Lab Visitor Center is doing now. And if you look in the lower right-hand corner, it says Dan Regan, SLHVC Guide. Well, Dan retired last year. Where are you, Dan?
Right here.
Hiding in the corner there. So Brother Dan is now working part-time at the visitor center, and he's come up with this idea to do an extended tour for tourists that want maybe 2, 3, 4-hour tours in extended areas in and around Lead that the current tour doesn't have. So with his innovation and ideas, we came up with this PowerPoint, and we've been working on it for a couple of months. And it's part two is the expanded tour, and that's what we're going to focus on. Part three is some guide training and bus driver orientation and safety training, which is integrated into this. We probably won't go through that, and we certainly won't go through part four, which is kind of a summary of the last 5 presentations, and goes into more detail about some of the underground operations and history. Trying to capture all this in what I'm calling Gold Server Encyclopedia to be donated to the Homestake Adams Research Cultural Center. This last week, Dan and I worked together, and I found some of the records that I had back in 2000 to 2004, 23 boxes full of this kind of things. And that's kind of the tip of the iceberg. So let's just get into this. I think you'll enjoy this. And it is a draft PowerPoint, and we're going to focus on the visitor center and the tour through Lead, as you can see here on this slide. These are the visitor center employees. It talks about Lead grew around the famous Homestake mine, 125 years. And I did want to dedicate this in memory of the men and women who labor, built, lead, and homestake, and a special recognition to those who have lost their lives underground in the 125 so years. They're close to 800 names here. And the depiction in the middle was crafted by our friend Bill Fettrell in lead. Also in recognition, the Sentagleste Waikon translates from Lakota as sacred hoop or sacred circle, and it is the dedicated area for reflection and conferences and a multi-purpose area that's kind of up on the top hill above the Yates complex and the main entrance right now. And I have it in here well, there it is. Much has been taken from these sacred Black Hills. Now it's our turn in our generation to give back. The themes that I came up with for all of this, for me, for LEAD, and for the mine is transition, movement, and innovation. The visitor center, if you get an opportunity to go up, it's free to go inside, look at all kinds of good things to contemplate. And there's also the short visitors tour, and hopefully soon there'll be the extended tour, all very reasonably priced. Just up the block or so is the Black Hills Mining Museum, very reasonably priced, was a great place to take family and friends and visitors just a short distance from here. So through the years, the open pit was developed. I have a depiction of the visitor center and the rock that was mined out of the 4850 excavation for the new science facility. Here's a picture of the old visitor center before the new one was built. Founded in 1875 and developed through 2000 and closed in actually 2003 and 4. And then re-entry began in 2007. And it was a property donation agreement, which we talked about in previous sessions here together. And I like to think of this closing of the mine as not an end, but a beginning. And I feel pretty strong about that. One of the things of the new beginning is this pretty cool overlay of the caverns that are underground that have been constructed, and they're building buildings inside of these gigantic caverns, some 450 feet long, 30 to 40 feet wide, 90 feet high. And there's 3 of them, plus all the utility caverns and travelways in and among them for all of that. And it'll take them 4 or 5 years just to build it. Another really cool map, if you get a chance, is this one hanging on the wall over here, is an overlay of about 8 or 10 levels over the town of Lead, color-coded to show how the mine lays underneath the property. So one of my other hobbies is writing essays and poems and all kinds of things. And I wrote a poem dedicated to this particular presentation. I entitled it From Rock to Light. From depths once carved by miners far below, these bricks of gold recalled the wealth their labors sowed. From Paha Sapa's heart, the Black Hills' grace, they drew the riches rooted in this place. Now they reflect a different kind of gold, a legacy renewed, not simply old. Though much was taken from this sacred ground, a deeper kind of mining now is found. Through learning, outreach, insight, shared and earned, the old dark workings turn toward light and learn. And in this chapter, Rising from the Past, the mine gives back with purpose meant to last, offering knowledge, hope, and common aim to all the towns once shaped by Homestake's name. What once began in darkness grows to light. The story opens, widening our sight. For even deepest places, sealed from the day, can rise to purpose, guiding us the way. Lead Then and Now, an expanded tour. A poster here in the lower right-hand corner was from the 1962 Homestake Surface Tour from May till October. I thought it was kind of a cool old poster. This is the original narrative that Dan uses and the other tour guides use when they take people on the tour today. I won't go through all the details, but they talk about all kinds of buildings and people and highlights of activities as they drive through Lead, back around by the high school. And this will be an expanded tour, pretty much the same tour up until about halfway through. You can see an overview of the property with the open pit or the open cut, how big it is compared to the town of Lead, and the two head frames that are being used as we speak, the Yates and the Ross. Yates being in the background on the east, looking east towards Bear Butte. And this is the outline for that. Again, we don't need to read that. We're going to go through that ourselves. But I do like to kind of show these slides so it's picked up as we record this for posterity and legacy in the videos. Some of the main features that we'll be looking at as we go on our tour. The red line depicts the surface property now owned by the state under the direction of the South Dakota SDST, South Dakota Science and Technology Authority, for the SURF, the Sanford Underground Research Facility. Again, these are the main features that we'll be looking at. Up on the side of the hill is this unique structure that has been kept for historical preservation. It's the B&M #2 head frame and part of the hoist room in the background, right alongside of the open cut. And I get into quite a bit of detail in this. This is a brief history of the Homestake and the rock facilities that we had for storing rock. This is an early picture of what the open cut looked like when they were first starting on the north side before they even went underground much. Kind of a blurry picture, but it gives you kind of an overview showing Highway 14A. This is be Central City here, and the town of Lead is here. Highway 385 going out toward Mount Rushmore is right here. You can see how big this waste rock facility is and the open cut in comparison. So all of the overburden from this was laid out on this hillside over here, has been reclaimed and is planted with native grasses, brush, and timber. Gold Run Park and the old mill and sand dam history. This is what the mill site looked like when it was in operation. Over here on the left and on the right is what it looks like today. It's now an interactive park. More pictures of the area of the Homestake. This would be on the Central City side, north, way north, and it shows the cyanide plant was in Central City. And some of you may remember there used to be an ice skating rink in that building before it was tore down. Homestake also took over what was called the Wasp Mine, which was Actually, when Dan and I were growing up, it was a part of the city dump system, and Homestake took it over and they cleaned it all up and reclaimed it. And now it's back to its original contouring. The Grizzly Gulch Impoundment Dam, which we talked about before, and how water is handled. Again, I won't go into great detail, but this is the Grizzly Gulch Dam. It was being built on the left and what it looks like today. And that water is continuously being treated at the Sanford Lab water treatment plant, along with the water from underground, to make sure there aren't any dissolved solids or ammonia or any other degradation that would harm the environment. This is a pamphlet that I ran across. I, again, won't go into great detail, but it really shows a great history of the hard rock mining in the Black Hills, particularly Homestake. These are all Homestake pictures that shows everything from mining, drilling, blasting, loading, hauling, skipping, little history on the strikes and unions at Homestake over the decades. A section on immigrants, which we're going to spend a little bit more time on. I'll talk about that in a few minutes. Not a lot of history on the immigrants and ethnic neighborhoods and ethnic grocery stores. And I'll give my best shot of what I've been able to find out. So this is the visitor center as it looks inside today, showing some of the experiments, one of the cages or elevator conveyances that's on display right in the main hallway of the visitor center. This is outside. Again, a dedication to the legend of mining. The circle frame, which is one of the rings that held the Ray Davis chlorine neutrino experiment that received a Nobel Prize and established the Homestake site as a premier site for underground science. Also, some of the older equipment, a large air locomotive, a small hoist, some other items that are in and around the visitor center. This contraption up in the upper left-hand corner is a four-wheel quadricycle. Used to run, it's 18-inch gauge. It used to run, I remember seeing it on the 4850 level, and it's fine going downhill, but that sucker's heavy. And I found it on the 300-foot level, and it's such a unique, made in place by Homestake innovators. We saved it and put it on display at that mill park. Another air locomotive, and a historical sign. Lead is known as the Mile High City. So this is the visitor center. You can see it picture there. And across the street, which is Mill Street now, was the band shell, and up in the upper left-hand corner was the Ellison Hill, an area. That's what it looked like when I was in school going to Lead. So the visitors tour, we take off from the Sanford Lab Homestake Visitor Center and go up through Main Street. You can see Terry Peak up on there on the left. And this is what Main Street looked like and looks like today. Kind of a hodgepodge of different pictures, give you a sense of what Lead looks like today and what it did look like. Lots of detail about all of these different buildings. Again, in order to get through this, I won't go into great detail, but interesting history on almost every single building and house in Lead. There's a story there to be told. And I'm trying to capture as much of this as I can in one place. Many people have done a lot of work in particular areas. So my encyclopedia is really giving credit to those people and just putting it into one volume, if you will. Although my wife would say, your volume is overwhelming your office. Homestake had great care for their miners and their families from the very beginning. free hospital care for any employee and any of their members of their family. And it was really quite remarkable. And a picture of one of the first hospitals. And this is what the hospital looked like when I was growing up on Main Street. And there's some really unique pictures there at the bottom from 1947 to 1953 of the operating room at the Homestake Hospital that I found from Deadwood history. And of course, it too met its demise in 1985 and is now a park. Up the street a little bit is the historic Homestake Opera House and Homestake Rec Center, we called it, for all the employees and their family. It was all free. Beautiful big library, pool hall, billiard hall, big swimming pool, a bowling alley. I think it had 4 or 5 lanes, recreation rooms, game rooms, meeting rooms, and of course the Homestake Opera House. When I was growing up, it was the Homestake Theater, and for a time I was a projectionist at that theater. It's being refurbished after the fire. Well, here's some pictures of it in its heyday: the Opera House, the bowling alley, and the swimming pool. So that 1984 suffered a devastating fire, and it's being rebuilt and repurposed as we speak. And on this, I have a link to the website for the Opera House too. So just a little bit further up the hill is the Homestake Mining Museum. And I think I get into some details about the history of that location. It's pretty unique. We'll get to that. But here's some pictures of what it looks like in the museum. Beautiful, beautiful collection of items. I've donated several tubs full of things that I collected over the years, and duplicates of things I had that I gave to the Homestake Adams Research Cultural Center as well. This picture is a picture of me when I was 22 years old on the left, and in the middle, running a raised bore machine. And a few years later, that's me at the mining museum with the very same reamer bit that I used in 1972. Again, more buildings. The First National Bank. In the basement was the Lead Daily Call. Weren't you where? There you are. Weren't you a what do you call it with the?
Machines at my type.
Yeah,
And then pouring the lead.
The lead for the printing presses.
Yeah.
So
Making the pages.
We have a drawer from one of those in our bedroom that Diane has her thimble collection in. Other buildings along the road. One of them was Finola's. Both Dan and I started, just pretty close together within a year or two of each other. And we would stop in at the Homestake employment office, get hired on, walk down the street, buy a pair of bib overalls, a pair of boots, and I don't know what else. And that night we'd go to work for the first day up at the Homestake and get issued a hard hat and a crescent wrench. And away we went. That was how they hired them. But you'd buy your clothes at Finola's Clothing, which was a pretty nice men's clothing store. And there's some pretty unique old art on the sides of buildings up in Lead. This is kind of a cool little sequence here. These are the Homestake apartments that were built for employees. And Diane and I, when we first were married, I think it was our second place that we lived, was in one of these apartments. Pretty nice apartments for employees. I was working straight nights and going to school during the day, and this is where we lived. They called it the Grandview Apartments and named the street that it's on Grandview because it had a grand view across the hill of the Yates complex. Now I'm going to take a slice out of that pamphlet, The Immigrants in the Mines. The English, Irish, Scots, Finns, Germans, Italians, Scandinavians, Serbs, and others, which we'll talk about, came to work in the Black Hills mine. Some came directly from their homelands. Others moved from other places in the United States. Each new group brought a new ethnic culture to the area. And this little cartoon on the left kind of overlays the town of Lead of where kind of sort of they were. It's not 100% correct. But I researched many different places, and the ones that I'm giving credit for, there are others, was Don Tom's Ethnic Heritage Lead, South Dakota. It's a 3-volume study focused on that period. And it includes newspapers, clippings, lodge registers, obituaries, and festival records. Don has done a lot of wonderful historical work up in Lead for the Mining Museum. Family search catalogs, Lead Historic Preservation, and let's see, did I miss out? Someplace in here I'll give credit to Elizabeth Lockhart. I think many of you know Elizabeth. She's over in the courtyard these days. And Elizabeth grew up, was born and raised in Lead. She left out after high school. She left Lead in 1950, was a registered nurse throughout the state of South Dakota, retired and has lived here at West Hills Village. And we became quite close friends and spent a lot of time visiting. And she's the one that kind of keyed me in on these ethnic neighborhoods and what she remembered. So I have to give Elizabeth Lockhart a lot of credit for what we have here as well. And I've depicted some of the flags of the different nations. Many of these flags do not exist anymore. They were difficult to even find on the internet. And you know, yes, there was a Chinese community in Lead, more located in Deadwood. And yes, lots of Native Americans, Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota. And that feathered staff is actually inside of Christ Church Episcopal in Lead. The community of Christ Church was honored with that staff of actual eagle feathers. That's very rare, but it was given to the Lead for its contribution to the Episcopal Church and the Lakota, Dakota, Nakota nations. So let's get on with grocery stores. This is a little example of some of the foods from the different grocery stores. But these grocery stores, these ethnic areas, were essential institutions for attracting and retaining Homestake miners and their families, and were fully supported and non-competitive with Hearst Mercantile. They worked together because of the ethnicity of the different groups. And again, these are some of the grocery stores that were listed and where they were located. And a little map, you can just kind of get a flavor of where these grocery stores were located. Highway 85 right in the middle there is actually Main Street in Lead. And Diana and I lived 44 years up in Lead right here on Sawyer Street. And we went to the Hilltop grocery store all the time. And in fact, they sold gloves and other items for miners, and you'd stop and buy a pair of gloves and a sandwich and go to work. The Hilltop Grocery. Jim Hoff, and before he moved here and moved on, was right here, lived right here by the Bleecker Street. Jim lives here. And these are a few of the buildings or locations that are still standing or were standing. in Lead that had the grocery stores. This one in the upper left-hand corner, the last name that we can come up with is Fox's. And that's, what street is that? South Main, right, South Main Street. Jack and Jill was right down by the visitor center, across the street from the visitor center. Richardson Ice Cream and Bottling Company became King's Grocery and now is King's Pasties. And you can see the Jack and Jill was right next to the First National Bank, and that now it's a parking lot. And the bottom shows what the King's Grocery Store facility looks like today. Now here's the sequence of the location of the mining museum as it is today. It started out in the same location as the mining museum. So going back in time, Christ Church Episcopal was built on that site. Well, a few years later, Homestake Mining Company decided to build the big Hearst Mercantile. Homestake had grocery stores throughout the Black Hills, Hearst grocery stores for miners, but more in particular for the timber cutters. In all of these different little timber areas, there was a little grocery store. And they decided to build what really was innovative, big department store. They sold everything. It was the what's the mall facility that is out here that we go to? Yeah, it was the Rushmore Crossing of its day. You name it, they sold it. Appliances, clothing, food, and the miners would go in and just sign their name, and then they would take a monthly amount out of their paycheck. So, company store. I owe my soul to the company store, as Tennessee Ernie Ford would sing. So they decided, well, we need that church site. And the superintendent at the time, Thomas Greer, said, well, that's fine. We'll just move the church. Well, it's brick and beam. So they tore it down brick by brick, beam by beam, and moved it up about 3 blocks or 4 blocks up the street to its current location. And subsequently built a statue to Thomas Greer. Actually, the statue was moved later as well. So after the Hearst Mercantile burned down, which we talked about, I think, last time, the Red Owl store was built in its place, a grocery store, later became the Piggly Wiggly. And today that building, the Red Owl Piggly Wiggly, that building is now the mining museum. Now in our day, when the Piggly Wiggly was there, the basement was a laundromat. Today it's part of a walk-through museum of mining equipment. Really quite unique and highly recommended. A couple other grocery stores up on Skyline Drive. Grocery store is now a residence. Again, the Jack and Jill store, you can see, was right kind of down from the Homestake Hospital, you can see there. And then looking up Main Street was some more different buildings and grocery stores. I'm going to tell a story out of school here a little bit. Underneath the Gold Dust Bar and Lounge, and I have it down there, it was the Apex 3-lane bowling alley and hamburger joint. Off limits to kids. I spent most of my kids there, my kid time there in high school. So that's where I learned to smoke cigarettes. I quit many years ago, but that was kind of Lead. It was kind of that kind of a town. Good place, wonderful place to live. Stores for anything that you could imagine and anything you could want. And of course, with the changes in transportation and highways and people moving into more suburban and urban areas, particularly Spearfish, Rapid City, and the big box stores, starting with, what was it, Kmart and then Walmart and all of the rest of them. These little mom and pop stores and shops met their demise. We all kind of lived through that period. More places, grocery stores. Bleecker Street grocery store is now a garage. The former grocery store in the middle there was the Nugget Cafe, owned by Ed and Kay Carr. It's now office space and is for sale if you want to put a grocery store in there or start a restaurant. And way in the Washington area, it's now a parking lot. There was a grocery store there, and then I believe the Washington School, elementary school, they tore it down, and now it's a parking lot. Homestake workers and ethnic neighborhoods, merchants and grocery stores. Again, the historical site on Main Street. Christ Church from the 1900s to the 1920s. Hearst Mercantile, 1920 to the 1940s. Red Owl, 1940s, 1960s. Piggly Wiggly through 1986, and then the Mining Museum, and then Homestake had a hand in it by donating the property to the city of Lead for the building of the Lead Mall, and that's what it looks like today. A couple other buildings. Across the street was Esther's Place. Not a lot of groceries, but they did sell cigarettes. One at a time. To anybody, yeah. Yeah, back me up. And our house was right behind the Hilltop grocery store. Down in Pluma was the Circle Foods. It's now an antique store. This is Christ Church. Relocation, flags, statue, pipe organ, all have a little really unique history. If you get an opportunity to go in Christ Church and take a look inside, it's a beautiful, beautiful building. And the congregation is waving to you there. And you can see the statue out front. And this is what it looks like, the statue. Anybody notice something about that statue? Take a good look at it. Look at the sign on it. It's upside down. The flames are pointing down. And that's the inside of the church. And I have arrows pointing at some of those ethnic flags. So I believe it was the 100th anniversary of Christ Church. Big celebration, recognizing all of the ethnic neighborhoods and the people that made Lead what it became. And there's flags to this day from all over the world along the sides and in different places, including the Lakota staff with the feathers up in front. Other buildings, the Highland Hotel, also known as the Gold Run Inn. Again, when I was younger, I was a clerk at the Highland Hotel. For the hotel, it was also a bus stop, so I was a bus agent. And it was also Western Union Teletype, which was the internet of its day. In the basement were several restaurants over the decades. Now it's an apartment building. This 1930s building is, to this day, is the home of the city offices, the mayor's office and the police department and all of that. The fire department was there, but just 15 years ago or so, they built a new fire station, and now it's a place for the city employees to park their vehicles. It's pretty unique Art Deco design and construction. And again, Elizabeth Lockhart's father was an architect and engineer for Homestake, and he helped design and build that building as well as the Lead High School building. Interesting history of the Oddfellows building on Main Street, fraternal organization. For a while, it became a church, and I think it's vacant today. You can see where the garages are in the middle picture. Just kind of gives you a flavor of all of the houses and how close they're built. Most people didn't have vehicles, so they walked to work. So everything was packed close to where they were. And each of these little neighborhoods had a grocery store for them. Lots of beautiful Victorian homes built during the gold boom, and a lot of company houses built. Oh, I didn't have it in here, but I have a advertisement. You could buy a house from Sears, and they drive it up on a truck, and you could do it yourself or hire a carpenter, and you could build your house. So there's a lot of these design build homes in Lead with that kind of top floor design. There's some differences, but a lot of Sears houses in Lead as well. Interesting history about the Black Hills Pioneer. This was just in January 3rd's newspaper. They're celebrating their 150th year, which got its start in Lead. A Voice for Lead, 1901 to 1974, and I've written a short history on it. Their office is now in Spearfish. Again, the basement of the First National Bank, where Bruce was a typesetter. And they moved from there up by the Methodist Church and built this building. You can see Lead Daily Call, Deadwood Pioneer Times. They had two newspapers, and they printed them in Lead until they moved out. The Methodist Church took this property over, and it's now the Christian Ministry Center. Another really cool old building, unique building, not many of these left throughout the country, is the Roundhouse for the Black Hills and Fort Pierre Railroad. It began in 1881. And Dan and I don't have a lot of family history. It's kind of lost in the fog of time. But we're pretty sure that our grandfather, Thomas Francis Regan, whom I am named after, was an engineer on that railroad and died as a result of a accident, got infection in his leg, and they called it gangrene, but it was, sepsis, infection. But that roundhouse was used up in Lead as goods and services were brought up from Rapid City and other areas to the south and east, up to the mines and out again. It's now, let's see, after that, I'm not sure what took place, but in the 1980s, it was a tire store. And then it was the city shop building for a while. And then some entrepreneurs took it over, and it became a really nice, almost museum and restaurant together. And it kind of went away for a short period of time. And now Dakota Gold Corporation has taken it over as their corporate headquarters in Lead, developing new mining ventures up at Richmond Hill and in Maitland. And they still have a lot of public venues there. That restaurant facility is still there, and they do open it up for special occasions, and it's available for use for the public. Of course, there's quite a story about the Homestake mansions, not just one. One of the first mansions, as you can see down in the lower right-hand corner, kind of looking up, actually looking north, I believe, is one of the first Homestake mansions in the very lower part of Lead. And as they moved the town of Lead, they decided we got to get the mansion the heck out of gold mining areas. So it's way up on the west side of town, up on the side of a hill. Beautiful building. 27 rooms, 10,000 square feet. They say the bathroom hardware, plumbing, fixtures are gold plated. Beautiful history of teaching and teachers and schools in Lead. I didn't go into great detail. There's lots of other books about that. I just try to give a flavor and references. I do have a huge bibliography and recognition of contributors as we go along. But Lead High School began in 1895, and of course there's the high school, which later became the elementary school for Lead Deadwood. And in 1970, Lead High School received the Bellamy Award, a national honor given annually to a high school judged to be best exemplifying the ideals of Americanism as articulated by Francis Bellamy, the author of the Pledge of Allegiance. I graduated in 1968. Dan was 71. So we were part of that ongoing. And, you know, when you're a high school student, you kind of know, but you don't pay as much attention. And in retrospect and thinking back about that, that's pretty significant. It just says something about the unique nature of Lead and what they offered families and students. And I have a little table here that shows the number of graduates over the decades and some history. Now, our tour now takes a detour for more expanded time. Speaking of time, we're almost out of time. So I'm going to go through this very fast. But we go out of town to the west. We do a turnaround by the Mickelson Trail. We go from Lead, and then we go down Kirk Canyon. And just off from the turnaround is the road to Terry Peak and Core Wharf Gold Mine, which is operating today. Down through Kirk Canyon, one of the first things we see is the Kirk Power Plant. Homestake Mining Company owned the Gillette coal fields, which are booming today. To feed this power plant to provide electricity for the mine and for the city of Lead. And I have an aerial picture of the low sulfur strip mine facility that began in the 1970s. A little bit down the road is the area, what we call the 300 Adit. That was a tunnel that goes towards the Ross Shaft. I'll tell a little bit more about that. And that brings the pipeline from the Grizzly Gulch impoundment. I said we had to treat that water. We mix it with the underground water because it's cold. The underground water is hot. It gets it to a temperature that does not harm the fish once it's discharged, and it's cleaned up along with the dissolved solids from the underground. And it comes down this pipeline, which is well protected. It's underground until it crosses the road and goes into that tunnel or adit. And it has 3 layers of protection, including a bulletproof covering over it and double and triple wall in some areas. And this is looking back up towards a hill from that same pipeline. And up on the hill, you can see this substation. That's the main substation that feeds the power to the mine and the city of Lead. More pictures of that pipeline going across the creek. And in early years, you can see that wooden wall off to the side. The railroad would bring explosives up and be unloaded, and that's where Homestake would take their explosives in these powder cars over to the Ross through that tunnel, and each of those cars would go to a different location underground for blasting the rock. Ventilation is the next step. The Oro Hondo exhaust fan and later the Kirk fan, which we'll talk about. Lots of information in Steve Mitchell's book, nuggets to neutrino about the Oro Hondo facility. I want to give special recognition to John Marks, world-renowned Homestake senior ventilation engineer, who passed away on March 16th, 2014, who had a great deal to do with keeping Homestake open in the 1980s and 90s with deep level mining and the ventilation that was needed. John was a really close friend of both Dan and I. This was the Oro Hondo Mining Company from the 1900s to the 1930s, and had they not gone broke and Homestake buy them out in the 1930s, we could very well be talking about the Oro Hondo Mining Company instead of Homestake. They missed what was one of the biggest ledges of ore, 9 ledge. They knew about main ledge, but they didn't know quite where it was. But they only missed 9 ledge by a few hundred feet. And if they'd have just gone a little bit further deeper or drifted out a few more 100 feet, they'd have hit the mother lode, so to speak, and been able to stop Homestake from expanding into that area. But that's why it's called Oro Hondo. And you can see that substation I talked about right in the middle of the picture. The Oro Hondo's off to the left, the pipeline coming down from Grizzly Gulch in the far background and across the road. So it's all kind of works together. You can see the Oro Hondo fan complex as it looked a few years ago. They've since upgraded it. And this is the upgrade. You can see the blue fans. And go into some detail about the ventilation system. At the base of the Grizzly Gulch impoundment dam, off to the side of the hill, which is well protected, is the number 5 air shaft. It was sunk down to the 5,300. It was later expanded to the 68 and even below through a series of systems for providing intake air for the deep level. It's now been reversed and provides exhaust for the Sanford lab. One of the things that I'm often asked is, what about carbon monoxide? What about the smoke? How do you protect yourself? Well, we have electronic sensors all over the mine that keep track of that 24/7. We have an emergency response team and monitors 24/7 that watch all of that. And that's one of those monitors. This one happens to be on the 4,100 foot level. Again, a little ventilation basics. You can see that map in the upper right shows the 2 intakes, Ross and Yates, and the exhaust, which is the Oro Hondo and 5 shaft. About halfway through the tour, they'll take a break here at this intersection. The road to the left goes up to Grizzly Gulch Dam. The one to the right goes over to the Kirkyard and another set of fans. And the other road connects Highway 385 and 85. This is the approach to the Kirk fans and the 300 adit. I told you that the explosives went through that 300-foot adit. It meets at a Y on the 300 level right near the Ross station. And this is the one on the east side. And these are the fans. You can't see that too well, but that's me standing there doing a little safety talk for us as we go into that 14-foot diameter ventilation. This is one of my favorite pictures from the 300-foot level from 2015 when I was doing inspections in March 14th. And those are ice stalactites and stalagmites. And you can see in the background just a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. That's the adit that goes out where the explosives adit were. Looking up from that intersection is the Ross shaft, and the brick building is the shower rooms and offices. A little bit down the road is the Grizzly Gulch pipelines that went from the mill that took the slurry out to the Grizzly Gulch Dam and brought back recycled water for reuse. Those have now been decommissioned. This is what the Yates waste rock pile looked like when they started deep level mining. They had to put the rock someplace, so they brought it to the surface and dumped it over to the side of the hill. And over the decades from the 1950s, 60s, and for sure the 70s, 80s, and 90s, that hillside encroached clear over to where it actually covered up the creek, and before it did, they put a big culverts in there. Well, that all had to be reclaimed when they closed, and this is what it looks like today. It's a nominal 2% grade, and located 4,000 feet of Whitewood Creek had to be moved, and the road had to be moved. The Mickelson Trail had to be redone, and it's now planted with and protected. Homestake owns the top part from the top ledge up to the head frame. Barrick Homestake owns everything below, so we're together forever. And the water has turned a little bit acid, so they have a little nondescript soda lime drip before the water goes into the creek, and they monitor that. They test that all the time electronically, and they test it manually every day. And this is now going back up towards Lead through Gold Run Creek, next to Gold Run Creek, going up Highway 14A. And this is the discharge from the water treatment plant. Along the same side of the hill looking up was the city dump, and that had to be reclaimed. Homestake took that over from the city and reclaimed that and cleaned it all up and covered it. This is a really quite unique picture from a postcard of Lead. And the mill, which is all of these buildings down over the side there, the white looking buildings. When Homestake closed, all of those buildings had to be raised. And they brought in Cleveland Wrecking, and they had these big machines, looked like dinosaurs eating. And this is what the park looks like today, where the mill was at. The tour then goes back up to the visitor center, but instead of stopping at the visitor center, it goes up Mill Street to the Yates head frame and around these areas here. The office, the head frame, the hoist room. Off to the east a little bit is the water treatment plant, and off to the left there is the new Rounds Operations Center. This is what the head frame looks like looking from the down up. It's a 150-foot high structure, and this is what it looks like looking out the rope raise to the hoist room. Outside the hoist room are these displays, compressed motor, overshot mucker tub. Just below on the ramp are the access doors to the shaft where everybody goes underground. This is what the inside of the hoist room looks like. I have some details there. This is what the hoist operator looks at as he's operating, or she is operating the hoist at the Yates. The Ross has now been converted to electronic, so it's push a button. Okay, millions of dollars to convert mechanical to electronic. They're planning to do that here at the Yates. Money pending. And I made one picture of one of the levels at the Yates right after we re-entered. Again, more displays, rock drill machine, a cart, and behind the hoist room, the tour goes around and looks at a lot of displays, and they're explained as well, different pieces of mining equipment, each with their own history and story. And of course, I never get away without somebody, where did you go to the bathroom? Okay, well, it's called a red wagon. Today we have chemical toilets like you'd see at a fairground, or now on the 4850 at the big science projects where 90% of the people work 90% of the time are flush toilets. They have bio plants that treat the sewage right there in place. Technology. But that's the red wagon. This is the water treatment plant as it looks today. Lots of history about water. The water treatment plant used to use rotating biological contactors. Now they use a flush system that runs the water through basically a swimming pool type thing where the organisms actually consume the chemical ammonia, which is the one chemical that doesn't evaporate from the Grizzly Gulch impoundment. The sludge and total dissolved solids go through another filtering system, and they're gathered into great big, basically balloons, and they're periodically hauled off to the Belle Fourche landfill. They love it. Gives them some real good, rich soil to put in with their landfill. Again, this is the discharge. I don't know. There has never been a violation since this plant started up in 1981 or 2. Neither with Homestake or when it was reconverted for the lab, since that lab has been running since 2007. The tour continues down through the shop yards, and Dan will talk about all these different buildings. And again, details about each building. Substations. This is the inside of the old machine shop. That's been torn down and is now part of the Rounds Operation Center. This building on the right is the foundry, which is cold storage now. I don't know if anybody see this cow? Can you see the cow there? Right here. There's a story behind that. They called some of the crew the Moo Crew. They were always moving things, but they were also kind of like cattle. There's more to some of these mining stories that I care to go into right now. They'll go by the Ellison complex, which is really this is all gone now, but this is what the Ellison complex looked like over the time of its life. It had a fire in 1930 and was rebuilt. And then back to the visitor center. All right, folks, that brings us to the end of our extended tour. Always want to reiterate the core values that we have for Sanford Lab: advancing world-class science and inspiring learning across generations. We do not compromise safety or endanger the environment. And that's it for today. The rest of it, I am going to run through the slides very quickly so that they're on the video. So if you'll want to I'll go through them real quick. If you want to watch them, there's some pretty cool pictures. This is the safety tips and the training for the bus drivers. That's me and our dog, Milo, bless his heart. Milo, the safety dog. We talk about mining, cross-section of the mine. The geology, the different ledges, all of the areas that were mined underneath lead, the types of mining, mineralogy, surveying, different statistics during the last 5 or 6 years of mining when we mined out. different methods of mining over the decades. My wife's dad was a timber stope miner. This is what he did in the 1950s. I married a gold miner's daughter. Everything from double and single jack to pneumatic, core drilling, sinking of shafts, raise bore drilling, jack leg drilling, down the hole drilling, electric hydraulic jumbo drilling. Mucking is cleaning up or picking up the rock by hand, overshot muckers of different types and styles, slushing, or which is basically a drag line, then front end loaders, including air conditioned filtered air cabs in the later decades, different ways of moving the rock, getting the donkeys and horses up and down the shaft. Some of them lived their whole life underground. To air locomotives. That's my friend and mentor, Fred Roebuck, at one of the air filling stations. Electric locomotives, trolley locomotive. Then they had to get the rock out from underground. That's the Yates hoist again. Of course, everybody has to breathe. You have to get the dust out. You have to get the smoke out. It's a huge, huge complex. Ventilation system. Again, the Orohondo. The Ellison fans or Kirk fans. Underground air conditioning is a little bit bigger than what you'd put in your house. There were 30-ton and 60-ton portable air conditioners. And then there was the 1969 or 6950 refrigeration plant designed and built by John Marks. The scale of this building is pretty incomprehensible. It's a big opening, and it's only about a third of the size of all the other components of it. And we always kind of advertise this plant is the equivalent of what it took to air condition both World Trade Centers. That's how big of a air conditioning plant it is. Different processes. These are stamp mills, gold tables. This is what that South Mill area looked like before it was, and the gold was extracted using redwood vats with cyanide solution. The cyanide plant in Deadwood, which is now the Deadwood Mountain Grand, was used to press the final slimes to get the final ounces of gold out of the gold that went through those redwood vats. This is the new South Mill 1930s version, an aerial view of it with the town just intermixed with the workings. The furnaces for melting the gold, pouring the gold, and moving it in those carts and made into gold bars where the refinery crew and the security crew take care of it from there. They all look pretty serious to me. They had to be crushed in these ball and rod mills, run through different extraction methods. This was called carbon in pulp. These were called spirals. Basically, they're automatic gold pans. And that's a line of gold on that shaker table. This is the process of extracting the gold from the rock. Then we had to clean up the mill area. Took a year or so of constant cleaning, tearing down. There were some properties that we also cleaned up along Whitewood Creek in the 1990s. And there was several tens of thousands of ounces removed during cleanup closure of gold dust that filtered down through the South Mill floorboards and into the soils. And they captured all of that, put it in bottom dump trucks and hauled it to Nevada to a what they call a retort, I think. Basically a big furnace, and melted it and got the gold out. So we had the cleanup closure of the property. That's looking north. That number 3 up there on the far right, that's that number 2 B&M shaft as it looked. South Mill, background for closure. This is what reclaimed area of waste rock looks like. They also did a lot of work on bat habitat, protection of bats and other species. Again, the cleanup of the city dump. The pipelines from Lead down to Deadwood to the slime plant all had to be raised and taken care of, and reclaimed areas. Not an easy task. Homestake also had that wasp mine, and this became a little visitor center down along the Mickelson Trail for the wasp mine interpretive display. Lots of reclamation, critical pathways in order to do it safely and environmentally sound. The mill all had to be tore down. Lots of community involvement, regulatory challenges, and all of the material from that South Lead, because it had been in contact with cyanide, even though it was cleaned, it couldn't be reused. So they, at the top of the East Waste Rock facility, they dug these pits, lined them with really thick, for lack of a better word, plastic, and put layers of clay and sand, mixed the steel and other materials in it. And when it was all done, they were able to fold it over and weld that plastic so it's like a big gigantic burrito. Then they put clay all around it and topsoil, and it's now animal habitat. That area can never be disturbed for human occupation. Lots of regulations, some of the areas that were cleaned up and how we did them. Different contractors, lots of documents. Again, the mill demolition, you can see all of the trucks and equipment. Hundreds of people would stand on the side of the hill for weeks in silence, watching a good neighbor be put to rest. It was a sad time for the town of Lead. And when they turned the lights out on those mills, the lights ran from 1940 till 2004. There were always lights on. Took a long time to get used to not seeing lights there. And of course, the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally does have impacts. Everything pretty much slows down to a crawl because you can't get anything in or out. Work continues, but they plan ahead for supplies. And of course, during cleanup closure in 2002, there was a big fire, forest fire, Grizzly Gulch fire, and both Dan and I worked on that as part of the mine rescue team to keep the property protected. We were part of a strike team for the Lead Deadwood Fire Department under the direction and incident command system by the Forest Service. It came close. You can see the water hoses spraying over the side. That's what we did. Keep the sparks from coming up against the property. Diane and our house was just off to the left. Underground cleanup closure. We did a whole section on that a couple months ago. Transformers. equipment, lubrication, storage. Any mud that had any oil in it had to be cleaned up and have a chain of custody and be disposed of properly under EPA regulations. Once closed, everything was signed off by me. February 11th, 2002 at 9:07, I closed this room off, TR. We had to clean up the 4850 neutrino site. And that was it. All right, we made it. These are some of the sources that I have. They're not all of them, but I do want to give credit to all of these different ones and get it on the video for us. Mission and Vision. And that's my last, that's a month before I retired in 2024 on the tramway. And that's my gold server icons. And that's it. Thank you for your patience and your attendance.